Okay guys, so we are now going to be moving backwards, and the reason I use those air quotes is, in my opinion, and you're going to see it very often in boxing, stepping directly backwards is very often a bad idea, because if my opponent is chasing me, if I step straight back and they step straight forward, no one has an advantage. And in fact, I'm probably one step closer to the rope. Within 2 to 3 steps of a normal size ring, I'm going to be pressed against that rope, which is probably to their advantage, okay? Whereas, if as my opponent comes forward, I take a slight diagonal step, if I were to drill this, rather than me starting in the center of the ring and ending back against the rope, if I were to drill this and start in the left-hand side corner of the ring, when I'm drilling this and I'm moving back, I'd end up in the right-hand corner. What that allows me to do is open up the ring, circle, and the ring becomes a much bigger place. Also, if my opponent's guard is directly in front of me, when I do this, it allows me access over their front hand. Whereas if I step straight back, their guard is still protecting straight down the midline. So a little slight, it doesn't have to be too exaggerated, but a slight step off the line is generally good. It also allows me to sit down into my punches, whereas if I'm going straight back, it's easier to control my head or my hips. Remember, hips and head work in opposition. So if you can control someone's head, you're going to bring their hips down, you can hit them and create an opening. If you can control their hips, you push their head forward, you can create an opening. It's a lot easier to do if I'm stepping straight back. Someone can frame up on me, control me, create an opening. It's all bad news, okay? So when we're moving back, a slight angle is generally a good idea. How can we step back? So, just like when we went forward, we can step back. Stepping back involves moving my back foot first, but as I said, I'm really going to be pushing off that front foot. So even though it's the back foot that moves first, I'm pushing off this front foot, which makes it a more dynamic move than if I am a little bit slow and cumbersome with it, okay? So when you're stepping back, whichever direction we want to go, that foot moves first. I want to go back. I move my back foot, my front foot follows, but I'm actually pushing off that front foot that allows me to propel myself backwards, okay? The stepping back, if you want to add the punches in, it would be opposite hand to opposite foot. And just know that if I'm stepping back and jabbing, that's not necessarily going to have the most amount of power, because I'm taking my force back and extending my hand forward. But what it is a range finder. If I can feel my opponent, I know exactly where they are. If they take one more step, I'm going to pull this hip out, bang, and that step back right hand, you're going to see a lot of time people walk people onto shots. They back up and then they hit them. They don't even need that front hand. They step, they realize they're in range, bang, and they hit them as they go, okay? So it would be opposite hand to opposite foot. Likewise, I can shuffle backwards. As I said, in an ideal world, I would be doing this a little bit on an angle, so then I can add in a pivot and the ring becomes a much bigger place than if I've gone straight back. The slide back, I would be moving my base completely backwards. So I'd move both feet and then I would hit. So I could slide out and hit, or what I could do is twist and slide, punch at the exact same time. So I can slide and then hit, or I can turn my hip and hit them as they're coming in. Both are extremely effective shots. You're going to see some great knockouts from both because it's unexpected. The person thinks they're chasing you and they end up eating the shot. Another way of moving backwards would be the drop step. So the drop step is literally just taking my foot backwards. So it can be a way of disengaging, it can be a way of switching stance, or if I add a punch, it can be a shifting shot. So my partner comes in, bang! It works particularly well with an uppercut, because it's like if you throw your keys at someone, almost instinctively they look up at it. So it's a good way of hiding the fact that if you switch your feet by just throwing something, it's like look over there while you're actually doing work down here, okay? So you can switch, come back, whatever you want to do. That drop step is a nice way, and again, you will see it in the high level amateurs. Sometimes they're just going to be disengaging, they're going to be reading the situation. You want to see if the person is more open from a southpaw position perhaps, but that drop step, we can add the punch, we can do it without the punch. Another way of going backwards, we can be using the aggressive step, which we discussed when we were going forwards. Remember, when we do the aggressive step, we are switching stance and we want our hips turned, okay? So it's a way of crossing ground quicker. Sometimes you're going to see it's combined with other moves. When we do the aggressive, we can add those punches in, and it's a good way of fighting someone off. If someone's coming in, we're backing up, but we're fighting them as we go. The important thing is that twist, because if I'm trying to fight them stepping straight back, I'm going to lose my balance. They're going to be terrible punches. What I want to be doing is sitting down into the shot. My hip is facing this way, punching down the middle, just like we did when we went forward, and I return that. So whether I'm going forwards or backwards, the important thing is those hips are turned out while you're doing it. That's that aggressive footwork that allows you to cross distance quicker. We mentioned the pendulum footwork when we were going forwards from that crouched position. Generally speaking in boxing, whichever direction I want to go, that's the foot that moves first. The pendulum footwork is the exception to that. So if I want to go backwards, I'd actually be moving my front foot, okay? There's been some great, I guess, variations of this. McGregor when he fought Aldo, O'Malley when he fought Sterling recently, where they've almost suckered them in by moving the opposite foot. So they've gone backwards, but they've started with that front foot and made connection as that person comes in. It's a beautiful shot because it is unexpected. It works particularly well if your legs are loaded and you can just spring, okay? So that pendulum footwork, rather than moving my back foot first, if I want to go backwards, I move my front foot and almost skip out. That's the pendulum footwork. I forgot the pull step. If your back foot, leave your front foot where it is, back foot moves out of range. As you come forward, throw a shot and that will make it a pull counter. The walking and running, we'll discuss for completion's sake. Walking backwards, sometimes you'll see it, for example, like Roy Jones Jr. walk back into the corner to be like, come on, almost taunting the person. Running back is usually not a good sign. Even walking backwards generally shows it can be a psychological thing, but it can be a fatigue thing. It can be that you're on the verge of being stopped. Visually, it doesn't give the best impression. I'd probably steer clear of walking backwards and definitely running backwards, but for completion's sake, we'll discuss it.